Welcome back to another edition of Driving Maul on Loud Radio. Shocky waiting for me to cock the dog. It didn't happen today.
What's happening? What's happening?
Yeah, Driving Maul, where blokes judge rugby, and plenty to talk about, Shocky, but the transfer window seems to be open, and I'm not even talking about European football here. Hey?
I'm so happy with that.
Do you see how many players are just like, I'm going there, you're there, I'm there.
It's been absolutely crazy. We're going to be like, the guy's going to run into the field and he's going to be wearing another jersey. You'll be like, well, what's going on and when did you move? So
the most amusing part was preparing for the show. I was like, why isn't Billy LaRue in the Griquas side? Oh, that's right.
But I'll tell you one thing I'm excited about is going to be talking the rugby championship squads, and I'm flipping amped for it. It seems like Heineke has sort of stuck with a lot of the youngsters he did initially pick for the backline. So hopefully, I'm glad he's following through with it. So
well, he's now on 15 wins, 2 draws, and 3 losses in his managerial career. So that gives him a 66% win ratio, or whatever it is.
Which should keep the dogs at bay.
75%.
I don't know. I'm not good with math.
Sorry, 10 wins. 3 draws.
I was just say 17. That's quite high. So 17 is the total amount of games he's played.
15.
10, 3, and 2.
Yeah. 10, 2, and 3.
That's not that's not too bad. And like I said, it should keep those angry people off him for a little while.
Indeed, but the angry people were all over the place with the announcement that Farid Apria's back in the box squad, and it's like, why is that a surprise to anybody? He's only 31. He wanted him last year, and Farid didn't feel that he was up to the level of Bok rugby.
Yeah, when we were all begging to have him.
No, exactly. And now you've got Hogard out for the season. It's like, you know what, bring him back. What confuses me is he says he's available for the home legs, and then Piet van Zyl will come in for the away legs, but they're only playing one home game, and then they're travelling before they come home for their final 2 games. So they've brought Farid back from Japan for 1 game against Argentina, and he's going to piss off again. So I can't quite figure that one out. The other interesting one is poor old Franco van der Merwe. Will he at any stage actually get a Bok jumper? Because he's been part of Meyer's setup now for 15 tests, and he still has a little 0 next to his name in test caps.
No, we actually forgot that he'd been selected by Heineke Meyer from the beginning, because we were actually chatting off air, and I said, I'm so glad that he's there. I think he deserves it. But he's been there the whole time. What is your job? I carry bags. Now shut your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Senior tackle bag consultant.
Correct.
No real surprises other than Farid in the side. I mean, it's all the
Zane Kirshner was a bit of a surprise for me.
Yeah,
he's a massive fan of Kirshner, but I just thought that with Kirshner having Kirshner, I thought he leaves after Super Rugby, or is it after Currie Cup?
I don't know, but there's quite a few of them that are leaving, and in fact there are 10 overseas-based players in his squad. And there's stories coming out of Saru that they're considering a quota system for overseas-based players to try and minimize the effect. But I want to know, does that make Chili Boy and Brian Habana 2 positive negatives or negative positives because they're players of colour, so are they part of that quota, or are they overseas player quotas, and do they offset themselves?
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Going back to senior tackle bag consultant, who is the most famous one that we've had? There must have been someone that has just carried bags their whole life.
Franco van der Merwe must be pushing hard
to
be part of a box set up for 15 tests, maybe even more. He might have been in and around touring squads with P. Divvy as well. So he's well versed in the Bok way, but not actually officially a Bok. Although you'll see him listed on the list of Springboks as Springbok number blah de blah, even though he's got 0, because if you get picked for a Bok squad, even if you never get a run or a jersey or a cap, whatever the one you would call it, you still register as a Springbok, which is a bit of a hollow victory for there's quite a few of them that never played.
You don't get a blazer though, do you?
You get your touring blazer. It's the cap that you don't get. And you go and have a look at the full list of Springboks. There are plenty of guys that are listed as Springboks, Springbok number 827, but never fucking played. And I mean, it's pretty much the same protagonists in terms of Meyer's squads over the last year. Albert Besson, Marcel Coetzee, Jean de Jong, Jean de Villiers, the Duplessis brothers. And a lot of talk coming out of them and out of New Zealand in terms of this new scrum law, where, I mean, the quote of the week for me was Yanni Duplessis saying the scrum halves are going to have to put the ball in straight, apparently.
Rumour has it.
But the new scrum is basically going back to the 80s fold in, where they set the scrum and then they're only allowed to engage, and a lot of talk that it's going to change the dynamics in terms of what scrumming's about, because it's going to be coming down to tactics rather than pure brute force. And the interesting one is that Cooney's been picked as a specialist tight head. So there may be some thinking around the way the new system works that Jake White named Coach of the Year at Australia's Super Rugby Awards.
That's not a surprise.
No. Probably Super Rugby Coach of the Year behind Dave Rennie, who really has done a fantastic job at the Chiefs.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think technically Jake White outminded too many people there.
Yeah, sure. But, we'll get into Super Rugby. We'll talk about the final later. But Billy LaRue's in there. And then as we had Siya Kolisi back from injury, Dwayne Vermeulen back from injury, Janne Vermaak back from injury, Guthrie Steenkamp brought in from overseas, Ruan, obviously, and Flo. And then the guys that are going overseas are, obviously, we mentioned him earlier, Zane Kirshner, Jean-Andre Kruger, there was another one. Trevor Nyakani's there. Mornay's going overseas. Flip van der Merwe in and around the side. So a decent-looking box squad and continuity.
That's what I'm so happy about.
Yeah. There were no real, what the fuck? And even with Dupree, I can't understand. People are saying, but he'll be 33 at the World Cup. So will Richie McCaw. So will Jean de Villiers. So was Os. So was Percy. Yeah. Brad Thorne was 38,000 years old when he won the World Cup with New Zealand. Just get over it. And it's and then it comes down to what we were talking about off air with Marco Wenzel back for the Sharks, or signed by the Sharks back in South African rugby at the age of 33, and people are banging on there. I personally think he's been brought back by Meyer because of his line-out specialist and the fact that Jandre's pissing off overseas in a month or two's time. Argentina have named an outstanding squad as well. The big name for me that's back in the fold is Felipe Contepomi, because he was missing for the last year or two, injuries and blah blah blah, and no real names that stand out. But the one thing that does hit home, and maybe that we need to start looking at this, and when you look at the Curry Cup squads that have come out, the RGs, most of their players play overseas. Yeah, they still put a competitive side together. And maybe we should just actually start allowing it, because we would then be able to pick the likes of guys that end up playing for other countries who've gone to play overseas for 3, 4, 5 years.
It'll hurt our Super Rugby, and it'll hurt our Curry Cup. Our local rugby will take a bigger pounding than anything else. I'm happy with the way things are now. I think if you top class player and you are playing Super Rugby, I think you up there in terms of earning money. Obviously, with the big boys get some big dollar when they go overseas. But I'm happy to see how things go. But I know the first one there, Jean-Martin Hernandez. Hernandez is one of those guys for me that is probably one of the best. I mean, he plays fly half and fullback, and one of the greats. He's got a lot of skill and he kicks exceptionally well. But he blows more hot and cold than Freddie Michalak. It's crazy. He's just never quite sort of excelled past from where he was. It doesn't seem to have grown into it. But looking forward to seeing what's happening then. Obviously, Jean Fernandez Lobe captaining, I would assume. And
I was just going to get onto that, because we were throwing names around for a Southern Hemisphere Lions touring side, and we actually completely neglected mentioning any Argentinians in that setup.
Lobe got 1 or 2 votes, he did, but not nearly as much as anyone else. I'll tell you one thing.
Which is weird, because he's a starter for Toulon. Yeah. That won a Heineken Cup.
Also, the fact that he's not playing, he wasn't playing Super Rugby, also, I think, went against him. But there were a hell of a lot less Australians in that side. They just come off a proper beating from the Lions, so I can understand why. But there's still some Australians that I think could still make that starting lineup.
Just on an aside, and I agree with you, there are a few RGs, and they'll come more and more to the fore as the Rugby Championship develops over the years. But I just saw a lovely tweet now, and I know it's got nothing to do with rugby, but I thought it was quite amusing. Jurgen Klopp, the Dortmund manager, said, "We have bows and arrows, and when we aim precisely, we can hit the target. It's only that Bayern have a bazooka."
Well played.
And then the Kiwis. This was an interesting one for me. Look, a lot of talk as we're bringing back a Bok legend. They're letting go of a Kiwi legend.
Apologies. One thing we didn't discuss was in the Springbok setup was the fact that we have 55 specialist Lucies and only one specialist tight.
Yes, well, but as we said, he wants to turn Cooney into a tight head, and I'm interested to see how that goes with the new scrum interpretations, because
it's going to be interesting. I'm not a massive fan of Cooney Oysters, and I don't think he's world class yet. He's still got to grow into himself.
But as a scrummager, he's right up there. Where he loses it is on the impact in the old scrum engagement, and we may well see a different beast in Cooney with the new scrum interpretations. The other thing that we forgot to talk about, which is a big thing, is that the Boks have seconded Richie Gray, the former Scotland back rower, in as the breakdown specialist, and he basically has created like equipment and stuff that won an IRB rugby training equipment of the year in 2011, which basically is designed to teach around the breakdown for pilfering, etc. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And then the tweet of the week was the photograph, did you see it, of Andries Becker standing next to the halfback for his Japanese side. No, it takes him up to his waist, I shit you not. I'll find it for you just now because it's hysterical. And then somebody tweeted, Heinrich's confidence will grow.
So the Kiwis.
Yeah, the Kiwis. Look, I mean, Perry Wipu, 80-odd tests for the All Blacks, not in the mix.
For me, it's understandable. I don't think it's such a massive blow. I think everyone is quite shocked by the fact that he's been in the mix for so long and now he's not there. But in terms of halfback cover, they've got some quality halfbacks coming through and guys that kick exceptionally well out of hand, and also good place kickers in the whole squad.
And young.
Yeah.
And decent. And the one thing that you can never fault the All Blacks on is they are ruthless. When it's time for a change, it's time for a change. And it's see you later. There's none of this keeping guys hanging around in the hope that they might come good. You're past your sell-by date. Goodbye.
Yeah, thanks
you. Thanks very much. Go stroke your World Cup winner's medal. But the interesting mix in the squad for me, and I mean I understand that you can bring players in as and when you like, but the back line is what confused the hell out of me. 3 halfbacks, 3 fly halves makes sense. At the same time, I understand that Carter and Barrett can both play centre.
Yes.
So that kind of maybe. But when you look at the remainder of the back line, they've got Nonu and Smith in the centres, Israel Dag, Charles Piatow, Julian Severe, and Ben Smith are the back are the backs.
And that is their squad. It's not like it's game day.
No.
It's not like that's when you pick your 22, you know?
Very strange and weird selections, but that being said, they have made the decisions. And then good to see Stephen Luatau there. He's impressed for most of the season, and he's obviously been picked up. You know, the Kiwis, they like that big blustering back row type player. And with Kieran Reid and Richie McCaw in the mix, Sam Cane probably the pretender to the Richie McCaw crown. Luatau brings in that other dynamic. Victor Vito, outstanding season, not in the squad. Wipu, pretty decent season, not in the squad. And I think it was Vito that got into the squad at Messam's expense for the World Cup. And is Messam there? Yeah, Messam's now back in the squad. So,
but Messam played his way back into that squad without a shadow of a doubt. He's had a monster last few games for the Chiefs.
Indeed. And then they will have Jeremy Thrush and Saili and Frank Alai training with the squad at the start of each week. The Aussies have named pretty much an expected side. I mean, there was nothing unexpected there, particularly Quade Cooper being back in the mix. As you were saying, a lot of talk around where Mike Harris might play in Mackenzie's plans, but Lele Afana, with his kicking record, does Harris get a berth? O'Connor selected as a specialist winger come fullback, not even linked to the fly half position in any way, shape or form.
Curtly Beale obviously not selected due to injury, but yeah, Mikey Harris I think will be back up at sort of a backup at 15, and he can always run at 10 if need be. But Israel Folau, Joe Tamani, Christian Leleafano, those are all big names, and Kuridrani's in the mix. Tamani, Matt Tumua as well. He was in the squad for the Lions. Jesse Mogg. So it's pretty decent.
And I mean, Matt Tamua will be a Wallaby. It's just when.
I'm still. It's just so weird how things have happened. If you just go back a year, when Christian Leleafano was playing at fly half for the Brumbies, and it was a no-brainer. He was going to be the Wallaby 10. He got injured. He came back. I haven't seen him play fly half once. He's been playing 12 and that's it. It's almost like he's just accepted it, and that's where he's going to play at 12.
And I mean, Tamur got farmed out to Province a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he was here and just coming out of under 20s or under 21s, played a few times and went back home. It was an interesting move. I'd like to find out a little bit more about it. But the guys didn't tap into his talent because I know he's a couple of years older now, and you kind of gain a lot more with experience. But yeah, interesting. I think beware the Wallabies. Beware a wounded wallaby.
Well, by the same token, though, they've come out and said the head of Australian rugby in a press conference yesterday said the Australian public can't expect miracles. So, but time will tell. We'll discuss the Rugby Championship in full detail next week once we've got lineups and sides for the opening games next Saturday. In the meantime, on to some Western Province Club rugby. Durban thrashed Tygerberg 54-24 on the weekend, 9 tries to 4. Marties beat Helderberg 28-12, 4 tries to 2. Vix upset UCT 5 tries to 2, 33-29 win. Discipline must have been an issue for Vix to only win by 4 points, having scored 5 tries to 2.
Yeah.
But they did get the win, and I mean that's essentially the Marties B side.
Hammy's played Belhar on the weekend as well, if I'm not mistaken, or was it the week before?
No, it was the week before when they thrashed them. And then last night there were 2 games in the cold and wet here in Cape Town.
Horrible.
UCT got off to a flyer against Hammies at the Green Mile. They were 22-0 up at half-time, eventually won the game 25-12. But that put a bit of a dent in Hammies striving for the top place for the non-university clubs in terms of the Rugby Community Shield next season. Community Cup.
So basically what happens is now Durban are comfortably ahead when it comes to this. The interesting thing for me is basically Durban went through last year to the Community Cup finishing top of the log. They can't get a wild card this year. So if they finish second, they won't be allowed to go back because they played last year.
Oh.
So if Hammies finish first, then it'll be third place that'll go through, which is quite interesting. So in order for Durban to go through to Community Cup, they have to finish first, and then the wild card comes up, and it's always controversial because it's not necessarily going to be Hammies. It could possibly. Oh, sorry, SK can't go through next year because they were wild carded last year as well.
Which makes it Vix.
No, Vix are University.
Are they?
Yes, Vix are.
Okay. Then it's Tygerberg, mid-table.
Yeah. Now, that's who I think should have got the wild card last year.
And didn't because of the...
Whatever. I don't want to get into it, but that was...
50 Shades of Grey.
But SK Warmers have had many opportunities with club champs and stuff like that, and I really thought Tygerberg deserved it, having been pushed into Super A again. You know, maybe it's the right call. Maybe they, in terms of depth and stuff, they wouldn't be able to cope with it. But I thought Tygerberg probably could have had a good shot there.
And then the other,
So it's just hotting up. The Community Cup is going to be very interesting.
And then the other result from last night was a little local derby here. Marty's beating Vix 20 points to 7. And what it means is Marty's now topped the log on points differential over Durban, 53 and 53, but they've played 2 games less.
Yeah.
Hammies are 4 points adrift of Durban, having played
1 game less.
I think they've played the same amount, but I don't know because unfortunately...
I'll let you know in a sec.
Because the Western Province Club Rugby site doesn't have the result from Hammies last night, and my assumption is based on that they haven't updated their information in terms of games played. But either way...
Okay, so the Super A log looks as such. Marty's
53.
Up with 53. Durban played 14 with 53, and Hammies played 14 with 50, you're right.
Okay.
So they're 3 points behind all games squared.
And then 2 games next Wednesday because there's no club rugby in the Western Cape this weekend, weirdly.
It's a long weekend, that's why.
And also boys want to go away.
Ramadan and a whole bunch of other things.
No, fair enough. That makes sense. But Hammies play Vix next week Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and Marty's entertain Tygerberg at the same time.
Hammies Vix is at home. It's in Greenpoint, if I'm not mistaken. Absolute cracker. Now, just an interesting bit of banter on Twitter yesterday. The guys discussing the Marty's Vix, and they're like, well, whenever have Vix beaten Marty's? Because Vix and Marty's are both from Stellenbosch University, and that's why I say Vix are a university. Vix have, I think, beaten Marty's once in the last 10 years, and that was ironically when they had to win their last 5 games to not get relegated.
I know, no,
the irony.
I remember the drama.
So the only problem with that is, and it's by no means bad bad blood or anything, but often they've tried to, Western Province have tried to make a rule that you can't play for Vix directly after playing for Marties. You need to get dropped out for a week. Because they won't allow the fact that they could load their side, but Vix, just be careful. Hammies must be careful of Vix next week, Wednesday. Massive game. I don't think Hammies pose too much of a threat to Marties in terms of winning the league unless they go on a massive winning streak and beat Marties. And if they'd beat UCT yesterday, that might have been with a shout. But
yeah, Marty's a couple of games in hand, and you can't see them really losing to anybody.
The thing is, the Marties could lose to Durban, they could lose to UCT, and they could lose to Hammies. Now, if they had to lose all of those 3 games and Hammies carry on going through, it'll be an interesting finish. But Durban putting in a massive shout, and Durban finished second. Finished runners-up to the Super A League last year on points difference to Marties, so they came close. They're hurting.
Awesome. We're going to go to a little music break. I've just picked up a hashtag trending on Twitter by Sky Sports Rugby called hashtag Sports Decisions, and they're asking people what their best sports decisions are. And there's quite a few interesting ones floating around. If I could just not hang it up. The most recent one that came in, William Webb-Ellis deciding to pick up the football. Steve Hansen picking Shane Williams as the third choice scrum after the 2003 World Cup for Wales. O'Gara taking the drop goal to win Ireland's first Grand Slam in 61 years. Wilco practicing for hours on end with his right foot. That's a very valid call.
Yeah, and a World Cup winning right foot.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready, mate.
Steve Walsh choosing to be a ref, not a model. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. When we come back, we are going to be talking Super Rugby. You are listening to Driving Maul on Loud Radio, where blokes judge rugby. Welcome back to Driving Maul. So busy reading things on Twitter and having a laugh here. We forgot we're actually supposed to be on air. Driving Maul on Loud Radio. A little bit of Super Rugby just to wrap that all up. First of all, the promotion relegation playoff. The Lions were defending a 26-19 win in PE and hosted the Kings in Joburg. The Lions led with about 13-15 to go, but Stokkies Hanekom got a yellow card, allowed the Kings back into the game. They ended up winning 23-18. They were up 23-18 with 5 minutes remaining, but just couldn't get the peanut they needed to keep themselves in Super Rugby status. So at the end of the day, I'd love to get Sharky back. He's just been distracted, so I'm just... let's go back to a few more of those sporting decisions that we've picked up, because the one I like was Heineken Meyer telling Tom Youngs he doesn't have a future at centre and try the front row. Ended up playing for the Lions in a winning Lions tour. 74 Lions deciding to go ahead with their SA tour regardless of anti-apartheid protests to go on and become immortals. And then I love that one, William Webb-Ellis deciding to pick up that football. Sean, come on. Leave me hanging here. Scorers in the game between the Lions and the Kings. Derek Minnie and Yaku Creel with tries. Converted by Alton Janshis, a penalty by Janshis. The Kings, Skalk Ferreira and Scott Bradar scored tries after Hanekom was yellow carded. Bradar with a conversion and a penalty, and as he said, with 5 minutes remaining, the Kings only needed to get a penalty to get an 8-point lead and hold on to their Super Rugby status. Lions fans cock a hoop about the fact that they beat a team that finished minus 266 points on aggregate in Super Rugby by 2 points on aggregate over 2 legs.
Yeah, that was interesting. I tell you that the Lions came out all guns blazing and really looked to absolutely take it away from the Kings. And the Kings, in true Kings fashion, fought back the way they did, where at the end, everyone was just quietly cucking themselves, thinking what's going on. And I was just having such a laugh, all on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere, the whole week leading up to it. The Lions are like, all the Lions supporters were like, it's a no-brainer, we're going to win. Kind of the same as the Bulls fans were in the semi-final. But shit, well done. What a game. And
I must be honest, I actually didn't get to see it.
Jesus, what a game.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. The second half was unbelievable. There was thing. And shit, man, what's the guy's name? Got a yellow card this
Stokkie Zannekom.
You told me to keep an eye out on him. Very big guy at centre, hey? He reminds me, like the way he's built and the look of him reminds me of Jacques Fourie.
Yeah, I have a feeling that it got lost in translation when they called him Stockies because someone called him Stocky once.
Definitely not. But I'm keeping an eye on him since you've mentioned. I wanna have a little look-see. But shit, yeah, and I still feel there's probably not the best thing that could have happened to SA Rugby for the Lions to go back. It's quite controversial, but I just they've lost so many players already. The guys don't have faith because they know they're going to be playing off every year. You know, they're going to go through
the
to
Lions
bigger
have
unions.
lost enough guys in the last season, and now the Kings are literally, it's like abandoned ship. Alan Solomons is pissed off to Edinburgh on his way, having a swipe at Saru about the whole setup and the debacle that's there.
3 years for the Kings would have been ideal. They would have been able to settle. They would have been able to blood some youngsters. They've got some great stuff going on with the youngsters. They've got great feeder schools, but I just don't think we're going to see them back in Super Rugby again.
And it's meant that there's been, as we said, an exodus. Waylon Murray already confirmed for the Bulls.
Yes.
SP Marais,
he's on the bench this weekend, by the way.
SP Marais signed for the Sharks. Sean Fenter's headed back to the Pumas for Currie Cup, but signed for the Cheetahs for next season.
That's great. Sean Fenter and SP Marais both brilliant.
Yeah. JJ Engelbrecht announcing that he is a Bulls player, but the Kings saying that he hasn't been released yet, although most of these
Jacques Engelbrecht.
Most of these guys have got contracts in place that say that they can jump ship if Super Rugby isn't held on to, which is also daft by the Kings. Bandisu Marku,
I don't think the guys would have signed.
True.
So
Marku and David Ballbring have also reportedly signed for the Bulls. Kevin Bays is heading to Brive. Skulk Ferreira has been courted by the Lions, and DCAT has gone on loan back to Western Province Rugby.
Well, a little bit of interesting spice. Kachukilis had quite an interesting... I know that some of his negotiations were along the lines of, I'll come back and play, but I need to be like your first or your second choice fly half. I'm not going to come there and sit on the bench, because that's the whole reason why he left in the first place. Which leads me to one other thing. Gary van Asvierken is going to go somewhere. He won't stay. He's had a fairly good showing in the few games that he's got. And
can you blame the kid?
He's definitely going to be third in line. And I know one of the Aussie sides might be picking up a South African fly half soon.
But can you blame the kid? Because he's given his all. He's been injured and blah, blah, blah. Then they bring Janchis in on loan for the Super Rugby. And now they bring Katrakilis in on loan for Currie Cup.
But Janchis was far in negotiation with signing for the Stormers if the Lions didn't make it through. And I can guarantee you, if that offer still stands, he'll leave the Lions. Those guys, if they're any good, will not stay at the Lions. They will move to another franchise, and the Lions will be the yo-yo side for future unless they pump some serious cash.
Which they don't have. They're in so much debt.
Just going to get on to that.
There's a theory that they might actually sell their Super Rugby status back to the Kings next season.
That's brilliant. Imagine the Bulls having to fork out all their players back now because they're back in Super Rugby.
On to Super Rugby proper. Robbie Robinson came off the bench to secure back-to-back titles for the table-topping Chiefs after the Brumbies ran out of legs in the last 20 minutes. Jake White's so astute. He knew he had to get as big a lead as possible and then try and hold on. They just couldn't get there. They kept getting pinged at the breakdown by Craig Joubert and conceding penalties.
Joubert had a couple of wobbles where he just was like 10 minutes of penalties for the Chiefs. I was like, wow, what's going on here?
Brumbies led 22-12 with 20 to go, ended up losing 27-22 and literally falling off tackles in the end. But little contentious for me. The Liam Messam try, they go and see if he grounded it, but the TMO failed to pick up the fact that Tawera Kerbalo basically sealed off I think it's White, who was standing next to him, basically put his shoulder into him to create the space for Messam to go in for the try. Yeah. Big interference there. Disallowed. And then
that was a humding of a game. That final was world class.
And then Scott Fardy with a try that wasn't, and we'll never really know. He was convinced he'd scored it, but if that had gone, if you know the ifs and buts of Super Rugby, at the end of the day, the Brumbies, considering the travel that they'd had, to get to 20 minutes out to be leading like they were, and they weren't headed until the 73rd or 74th minute of the game, was a stellar effort. But what can you say? At the end of the day, the Chiefs scored the most tries in the Super Rugby competition this season. They're off the least amount of possession, and back-to-back Super Rugby champions. Only the third time in the history of the competition that the sides managed to do that.
It was quite interesting. You talk about the ifs and buts and the tries and everything. There was one moment there, and that was when Robinson scored that try. It was it just his step. The guys they were tired. They weren't thinking. They just all moved out the way. It's kind of this very similar to when Brian Abana scored that try against the Sharks in the final. Yeah. Like everyone was pushing to push him out and left the whole midfield open. And
again, in the same vein, I mean, the Brumbies missed 2 kicks for touch with penalties in the final 20 minutes, where they could have put the Chiefs back in their own 22 and had the ball at line-out time, much like France Steyn missing the kick to touch that allowed Habana to come back. And I'll never forget that final. I was sitting with a Sharks mate of mine, and the kick didn't go out, and I said, Bulls win, and the whole room laughed at me. Yeah. And they weren't laughing 5 minutes later.
So interesting, and the Chiefs deserve it. I was really shouting for the Brumbies. I'm a massive Jack White fan. I really wanted him to push all the way, but he makes yards every year. Makes yards with a young side, and the guys they're forced to be reckoned with. The Brumbies they travel, they play at home. Anywhere you're going to cuck yourself next year, and everyone knows it. And he's got the right mix of players, and he's creating legends out of nothing. So it's good. And
no doubt they'll recruit decently again in the off season now that they've people want to go back and play in Canberra. And when you consider where they were 2 seasons ago, in the debacle and the chaos after the whole player revolt and coaches getting fired, and
wasn't Laurie Weeks leading?
Yeah, and they finished. They ended up 13th in the log.
They were getting humped.
So great effort by Jake White. Heineke Meyer can still rest easy on the fact that he might be the second man to win a Super Rugby and a World Cup title. Yeah. But Brumbies were my shout early in the season, and if they'd just managed to sort their shit out and not lose to the Force, they would have had a home semi and a home final and not had to travel, and that makes a huge difference.
Mindy, I said that was unlucky. She goes, nah. I was like, whoa, easy. She goes, if you lose to the Force, you don't deserve it. Fair enough.
But only one side has ever won away from home in Super Rugby in a final.
Crusaders.
Against the Brumbies. And that is a frightening stat in itself. Okay, quickly, just to run through Super Rugby. Try of the season. For me, personally, Colin Slade rounding off that Highlanders team move against the Rebels in that cracker with 2 games to go, or the last game of the season. That for me is the try of the season. Backs, forwards, everybody interlinking, passes coming inside and out, and pop passes and props running at lines, and then Slade finishing. That was my try of the season.
My try of the season, Israel Folau. He's got 2 of them, but one he's run through a whole bunch of guys and scored. I think that Izzy Folau is probably my shout for try.
Player of the season?
Well, the player of the entire season.
Which is a tough call, considering Hooper was given the Australian player of the season, surprisingly.
That's a joke.
Folau would have been my bet.
I'll go back into Super Rugby on a whole as player of the season, but just touching on the Australian player of the season, Michael Hooper. When you look at the likes of Will Genia, George Smith,
that's who he beat.
Christian Lealefano, Israel Folau, just to mention a small few. And I thought Stephen Moore had an exceptional tournament as well. It's really very interesting, and it's not like Hooper has been dazzling. He's just been doing his job. Hasn't been standing out. But be that as it may, he was their call. I think I agree with you. I think Folau would be in the top 3 for player of the year. I think Aaron Cruden would be up there,
except for his display in the final. I mean, he really did nearly blow that for them. He missed. And at the end of the day, when you look at the opportunities the Chiefs had, they probably deserved to win the game on the balance of play. Yeah. But they nearly didn't, because he was kicking like a donkey with a blindfold.
Yeah. And Kuridrani was another one. I thought Kuridrani had a great year.
Other contenders for me, Ben Moen and Frank Halai.
Yes. And who would your Kiwi player of the year be?
Halai.
Who would your South African?
I would be tempted. There's no real standouts. So.
Piet van Zyl would be mine.
Lappies Labuschagne. Or Philip van der Walt.
I think
Eighth man for the Cheetahs,
yep.
Philip van der Walt.
And I thought a couple of the Kings players deserved an honourable mention, even though they lost. But
Wimpy van der Walt, JJ Engelbrecht, definitely, and certainly some of their backs. Chiefs 54 tries in their 18 games in total. Steyn topped the point scoring charts. Lele Afana was 15 back, and he really looked like he was going to be challenging Steyn in the first half of that game. I thought, oh my goodness. I was cracking a joke about the 38 points last week. Frank Allied 10 tries, topped the try scoring charts. And now other news. Beauden Barrett has revealed that he's turned down an approach by the Auckland Blues to stay with the Hurricanes for next season. As we said, Hooper was nominated Australian Player of the Year. Jacques, the man-possessed Potgieter, has gone to Japan for 6 months and has been signed for 2 years by the New South Wales Waratahs.
Crazy stuff, that.
Indeed.
Very interesting. But massively out of left field as well.
No, hugely out of left field.
I was like, what?
But the other advantage and the thing that I love is the fact that he's already played for the Box, and they might have forgotten that when they signed him. But all in all, Super Rugby has come to an end. The Lions will be back in it next season. The Chiefs will be defending champions, looking to go for 3 from 3. And don't bet against it. Brumbies should be up there. And we'll see what happens with the South African franchises in terms of the recruitments that they go through. But when you look at what's left South African shores for next season's Super Rugby, can you really expect the South African team to be challenging other than the Sharks?
I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Sharks have got to offer next year. I think the Bulls will still. They've got such a strong winning culture there, and they've signed up half of South Africa, so they're in with a fair shot always. Whether they're going to have the right heads to take them through those tough games, won't know. But next year, I'd like to say the Stormers will be in with a shot, but I'm not sure. They've lost a number of guys, and I do believe that their coaching isn't going to lead them anywhere further. I think they might need to change things up a little bit, but we'll wait and see.
Time will tell. I'm actually going to try and play some music now because I actually have a suspicion we didn't actually even play anything on the last little radio break.
Sure.
You're listening to Driving Maul on Loud Radio. We'll be back after a little bit of Mumford & Sons. Welcome back to the home stretch of Driving Maul. It's time to talk about a little bit of Currie Cup, the oldest provincial rugby competition in the world.
And it's starting this weekend.
I know, but did you know that it only got into the group format type round robin competition thing in 1968? Prior to that, it was more like it was like a Ranfurly Shield kind of thing.
Really?
Kind of. But
so whoever wins and's got if you've got the trophy and you lose, the other guy gets it.
Yeah, basically. Currie Cup is going to have prize money for the first time in its history. Didn't know that.
What?
Announced today. ABSA put 5 million rand up, and that's going to be split between the Premier Division and the A Division, which I never understood either, because how can you be an A Division when you're the B Division? But the winners of the Currie Cup final will get 1.8 million rand. The losers 1.2 million rand. The B section will get 1 million rand. Watch the Kings come back from the doldrums with a little bit of a cash inflow.
Oh, be careful, the Kings.
And then half a bar for losing the B division. Other news, and this one's quite interesting. Bias Roo, and we all remember him, cop killer, body count in the house. He went to play a bit of rugby overseas after having his contract...
Been in France, eh?
Yeah, his contract cancelled by the Bulls for breach and all kinds of things after he... beat a cop to death. It was we won't even go there. Anyway, the Lions are talking about signing him for the Currie Cup, so we'll have to watch that one. The bookies have the Bulls and Province as joint favourites to win the whole bang shoot. One can only assume this is based on the fact that they've won 32 and 23 titles between them. The Lions are the next best on 10. Sharks 7, Cheetahs 4, Griquas 3, Border 2. But I can't fathom how Province and the Bulls are the favourites to win the Currie Cup, unless it's based on the assumption that they're going to have their box back for the last round and then the semi-finals, because you have to assume that the Bulls and the Province will be in the semi-final mix. But when you look at the sides, it doesn't make any sense. But we'll start with the first game this weekend. Friday night, 7:10, it all gets underway. Griquas play the Sharks in Durban. For Griquas, Hilton Lobbits is on debut for Griquas.
Hilton Lobbits has been playing for the last 2 seasons. Before that at UCT, he was playing club rugby for some time, but he's been in Italy. Is that where he's been?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gous Prinsloo and Nico Skeepers at 15 and 14 also on debut for them. JP Null playing for Griquas. Francois Brimars in there. And then Lichtor and Landman, Lawrence Ardenser and Reno Barnes, who've all been involved with the Cheetahs this season in the starting lineup.
JP Null and Tom Carter are both one and the same for me. They just need to go away somewhere.
Possibly.
Yeah, forever.
And then Matthew Dobson on the bench at hooker. Is he Dobbo's love child, son, daughter?
Andias.
Durant Gerber and Karel Greef, the other 2 debutants there in terms of playing Currie Cup rugby. For the Sharks,
Rocco Jansen on the bench for...
quite surprised by that.
Quite solid, eh?
And
Fullback.
quick.
Yeah.
No, he's a
Winger.
quick winger,
Yes, yeah.
which means this Nico Skeepers must have something to show.
Jeez.
For the Sharks, Odwan Dagani's playing fullback, which isn't really like surprising news given that he's played there before for the Sharks when there have been injury crises. But there aren't really injury crises at the Sharks and Currie Cup, and Odwan's actually been selected by Fenter and the new coach, his name escapes me, McLeod Henderson. So they've said his future is at fullback. Cesar Mazeko on the wing, interesting. Louis Ludick continues at 13, where he ended the season.
And, ladies and gentlemen, Timmy Whitehead has come back from injury. Finally. Injury. I'm getting excited.
And then the hot stepper, Lawasi and Volvo on the other wing. Butch James back from suspension with Shah McLeod making the halfback pairing. Keegan Daniels, Jean Daysel. And then Breinard Stander on debut. Marco Wenzel signed from overseas. We were talking about it earlier, the line-out specialist. Edwin Hewitt played a couple of Super Rugby games this year, which I was quite surprised to see because I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't know that. And then a front row of Vian Herbst, Carl Cooper and Dale Chadwick, which pretty much looks like their Currie Cup front row of last season, which is understandable considering what they've got floating around in the box squad.
Terran Tembu.
Yeah, on the bench, Terra's back. Craig Burden also back from injury. Corbus Reinach, Fred Zeilinger, and we'll see what happens there. Come, Super Brew. Look, everything inside of me is Sharks will win this one comfortably, which means the Griquas will probably go and win it.
Yeah, wait, the Griquas are playing away from home and they don't travel exceptionally well. I say the Sharks are going to win that by 19.
I was going to go 22.
Do whatever you want.
So, Sharks win, according to the blokes on the couch and Judge Rugby. Time will tell. For the Lions, they've made quite a number of changes from the side that played against the Kings last week, which is understandable.
Wouldn't it be funny if they go to hiding?
They're starting Crescenda Botha at fullback, the Namibian fullback. Stockys Hanekom is there.
Yes.
Yeah. Stockys Hanekom and Dylan Desfontaine are the centre pairing. Anthony Forming. Marnitz Bosself starts at fly half. Janchis has been rested on the bench.
Same centre pairing they've been spending most of the season with. And I'm actually glad to see Dylan Desfontaine back because he's a ex-province boy, moved to the Lions, tried to get some game time, wasn't even getting game time when they're playing Super Rugby, and he's been fighting his way back. So wish him all the best.
A back row of Willie Brits, Warwick Tecklenburg and Derek Minnie, the captain for the season, according to Johan Ackerman. He says it's the Warren Whiteley would have been the skipper, but he's injured, and they don't look like they're going to change anything because Whiteley's only due back towards the latter stages of the competition. The rest of the pack doesn't ring any bells whatsoever. Hugo Kloppers, Stefan Greef, Ruan Dreyer, and Jacques van Rooyen. The only one there that we recognise is Martin Besaidenote at hooker. Their bench, the ultimate bench sitter in the history of South African rugby, CJ van der Linde. And then this name, you've got to love it. I mean, you get Lichtor and Landman and blah, blah, blah. But when you see a Dutchman with the name of Lambert, you have to laugh.
Lambert Groenewald.
Lambert Groenewald. Winning.
Interesting, you see Lionel Cronje on the bench bracketed with Robert de Bruyn. Heard some interesting transfer rumours about Cronje going to the Cheetahs.
Which is why he's bracketed.
Oh. Maybe he'll be running on for the Cheetahs. Maybe, wouldn't it be funny if he was starting for the Cheetahs this week?
The Cheetahs. Now, I mean, we went through that Shark side, and they, for me, have got to be one of the favourites based on that squad to win the Currie Cup. But when you look at this Cheetahs side, you've got to think, Cheetahs to top the log comfortably by the time the Boks come back. Henny Danila at fullback. Rian Smith has been deemed no longer worthy of fly half after hitting the post in the playoff game, and he's been shifted out to wing. Johan Sadi, Robert Eberson, who's obviously going to be there for a while until he goes to Montpellier. Raymond Rule, Elgar Watts, Cyril Pretorius, Philip van der Walt, probably the standout loose forward in the country in Super Rugby this season. Lapis Labuschagne, Boom Prinsloo, Waltie Vermeulen, Loot de Jager. He will be a Springbok. He's a massive beast of a man for 21. John Roy Jenkinson, never heard of him. But
I was going to say, I was hoping you could shed some lights on that. Who's that?
No idea. Herky Levenberg, the brother of Tian, and Caleb Oosthuizen. That is a solid Cheetahs side taking on the Lions. And don't be surprised for the Cheetahs to win this one by like 20.
I've got Cheetahs down by 11.
And
what a matchup for the first game of the year, Province Bulls.
No, indeed. I just wanted to run through the bench quickly for the Cheetahs because Pete Lindeke's there from the Sharks.
Yes.
All of a sardine. Piet van Sale, Devon Robenheimer, and Vian de Preux, and Etienne Renneker. So a pretty decent bench for the Cheetahs as well. On to Province versus the Bulls. And there's a tipping point in South African rugby this weekend, Sharky, when you look at the number of youngsters and new names that are floating around across the provinces. I nearly said franchises. That would have been a disgrace.
Jeez, it would have been. Aussies.
Province are playing here Aplon at fullback. Gerard van der Heever, talk of him possibly playing centre, but he is going to start on the wing. Pat Howard.
I'm not sure in terms of his passing, because we obviously don't see wingers pass a hell of a lot, but in terms of his pace and his size at outside centre, he could actually bash holes through people.
But Pat Howard is not much smaller, and he is going to line up outside Damien de Allender, a rather exciting centre pairing.
That is a huge and quick centre pairing.
And young.
Yeah. That is very interesting. Going to be
Cheslin Colby. Now, I am going to have wet dreams between now and Saturday about Aplon hitting a gap and Colby taking the inside ball and hitting another gap. It's going to be like, how did they do that? You know those like sequence photo shots where they show a guy doing a movement and it's the same guy through the picture? It's like, oh no, it's not.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, and I'm glad that Colby's getting a start. We all want to see him playing more.
Gary van Asvegen had his best game for the Stormers ever in his last game of the season, so happy to see him starting. Louis Schroeder on the outskirts of box selection and probably has played his way into that position on the back of Nick Groom being, I wouldn't say out of form, but the in and out of the side, and you can't develop momentum playing rugby if you're being rotated between two other guys. That just came out wrong as well.
Yeah, no, I'm not happy about it. I still think Nick Groom was very unlucky to be dropped. He had a partially poor game that dropped him, but they didn't play him for another 4 or 5 games afterwards. So interested to see what happens. Schroeder has been playing and been playing well, so you can't drop them. But then why did Groom get dropped in the first place? Played devil's advocate, but yeah, good to see it. Hopefully Groom will come on and bedazzle.
Nizam Carr impressed towards the end of the season as well. I hadn't really thought much of him, but he certainly started to come to the fore. Reynard Elstad back from injury. Dion Fourie, is he a hooker, is he a flank?
Well, they were talking Springbok call-ups and saying that he if he would again make Springbok, he'd be doing it as a flanker.
What arseholes are talking that? Because if they're not going to pick Heinrich Brissot, they're certainly not going to pick Dion Fourie.
Correct.
De Kock Steenkamp and Jan Gerbrand Grobler in the locks. Brock Harris, Skara Ntebeni, and Stephen Kitsoff. Skara Ntebeni will be a Springbok in my lifetime.
You think so?
Yes.
He's not a massive guy. That's the only thing that he's got going against him. But damn it, that guy is just an absolute machine on the field.
And he's only 21.
Correct.
On the bench, Ruan Kitsoff, the Namibian back from an overseas stint. A young Alistair Vermaak and Burton Klaassen, don't really know them. Michael Rhodes back from injury alongside Pat Cilliers and Groomy, obviously. For the Bulls.
Kurt Coleman is the cover at 10.
Yes. For the Bulls.
Strap
for the first time in 75 years, they've got a Roy Neck captaining the Bulls side in Currie Cup rugby.
Come on.
Jono Ross of Turks and formerly head boy of St. Scythians is the Bulls captain for Super Rugby. Here's an interesting one. Elton Janchis' little brother Tony Janchis is starting at 10. Travis Ishmael, Tony Janchis and Vian Liebenberg were in the Junior World Cup winning side of 2011, and in fact Vian Liebenberg was the skipper of that side.
Correct.
Grant Hutting, Paul Willemse, formerly of the Lions and also of the Junior World Cup side. Only 5 players that started the last Currie Cup game for the Bulls in Super Rugby. Frick Kirsten, Willie Weppener, Morne Mellet, Francois Venter, and I think Sampi Maastricht, but I stand corrected. Willem Sternkamp on the bench. So 5 out of the 23 started their semi-final against the Sharks last year, which is mind-blowing. Jacques Duplessis, looking forward to seeing him, but a young Bulls side, and I can't fathom how they've been made favourites to win the competition.
Yeah, very interesting. Pretty decent. Their backline doesn't have a hell of a lot of big names. Jürgen Fisser we all know about, but Sampi Maastricht, Ulrich Beers, Francois Venter, Travis Ishmael, Tony Janchis, and Rudy Page. The backline. A lot of guys that you've heard of but not seen them a hell of a lot, especially in the Bulls setup. So massive changes, and they'll be dying to get the Springboks back come 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Oh, maybe even longer. I think the last rugby championship game is the first weekend of October.
I was going to say the second. It's normally the middle of October that the Bucks normally come back for the semis, or the week before. So I'm going to say Province by 8.
October 12th is the last game of Super Rugby. Of Currie Cup. And
October 12th. Oh, but
Currie
then
Cup.
the semi-final and finals.
Yeah. But the last game of the rugby championship for the Boks is the 5th. So literally it's one final round. The other name to look out for in this Bulls side, saw a bit of him in the Varsity Cup, Clayton Blommagees.
Yes, we all know about him. I was actually wanted to touch on him. He's on...
you wanted to what?
Yeah, stop it. He's coming off the bench. He's absolutely brilliant. He's quick. He's got a great step on him. He played almost the entire Vodacom Cup for them. So, yeah, it's quite exciting.
Province Bulls score predictions.
8 Province.
I'm inclined to go higher than that.
I was just thinking it could easily go higher. Do it.
15.
Oh, nice. 15 is a great shot. I'm going 8, but I think Province. I'm quite confident they'll win the game.
Awesome. Well, we've pretty much run out of time. Sharky, it's been great.
Thank you. It was fantastic.
We'll be back next week, and there's a possibility that a rising star in South African rugby could be on the line with us.
Yes, we'll. I'll make a plan. I'll drop you guys. You can follow us on Twitter. It's @BlokesOnTheCouch and @JudgeRugby. We'll let you know as soon as that's confirmed. First rugby championship game next weekend.
No. Next weekend.
Yeah, not this Saturday. Next Saturday.
This Saturday.
Now.
Not tomorrow.
Jesus. Next Saturday.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, cool.
So the way you said next weekend, I thought you meant like 2 weeks time.
No.
So next weekend.
Great. So
RG's in Soweto.
Yeah, it's going to be a cracker. So so basically Currie Cup, Western Province Club Rugby and the Rugby Championship going to be upping everything and chatting about next week, as well as the Viva Premiership starts in a few weeks as well.
Yeah, and I actually meant to touch on this, and I will get onto it next week. But I do have a question, and we'll definitely debate it next week. But let's just lay the foundation. I can't fathom how next week Province versus Cheetahs kicks off at halftime Box Argentina.
What?
True story.
What a load of cuck.
Folks, you've been listening to Driving Maul on Loud Radio, where Blokes Judge Rugby. We'll be back next week. Enjoy the rugby this weekend.